Welcome everybody. Nice to see you all. My name is Kate. I'm the Director of Sales, and welcome to our fourth REVÍVŌ Roundtable. Thank you so much for joining us. As some of you may know, every few months we host an engaging. Every few months we host an engaging webinar. We talk about health and wellness topics that are prevalent. We've recently spoken about topics such as mental health, finding happiness during difficult times in COVID, and Bali and the sustainable future for Bali. So if you would like to revisit some of these topics that we've previously done, please feel free to visit our website. Under our blog section, we have all the recordings available to rewatch and on our social media. So I just wanted to start by giving a quick update on REVÍVŌ Bali. For those of you who don't know, we're currently temporarily closed, and we have been for the past 12 or so months during the COVID times, and we're currently hoping to reopen to international travel towards the start of 2022. At this point, Bali is still not open to international travel without quarantine, but we're following the government's announcements closely, and we're really hoping to accept guests again soon, as soon as January, which will be very exciting. Regarding any questions, hoping you guys will have lots of questions. This is a really interesting topic, so feel free to raise your hand or just type a question in the chat box. We'll also have some time at the end of the call for any Q&As if you're interested in actually asking Kim a question. And today we're going to be introducing Kim Rose, who's our brand new Wellness Director for the REVÍVŌ brand. She joined the group in July, and she's going to be looking after all the wellness offerings for the REVÍVŌ brand. She's also looking after all the consultations and curating the guests' wellness journey and experience. So we'll be discussing one of Kim's areas of specialities today. It's fasting, immunity, and the microbiome. I think this is a very important topic considering we're all coming out of the pandemic with a new vetted interest in health, wellness, and most importantly, immunity. A lot of people are talking about immunity right now. What can we do to make our immune system stronger? So Kim, let's start off with an introduction. You can tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your wellness passion. So over to you.
Okay, thanks, Kate. First off, I'll just thank everyone who registered and signed up for this roundtable. Kate, like you said, this is such an important topic, and I'm just super excited and happy to be able to share it with all of you. So thank you. As for my background, it's been quite the journey. I think I always knew from when I was quite young that I wanted to be a doctor of sorts. And I did look at going to med school, you know, the more traditional route and going to medical school after high school, but I knew that there was a lot more to health and wellness than, you know, prescription drugs and surgery, which are kind of the cornerstones of Western medicine. So not that I'm anti-Western medicine at all. The advances that we've made in the last kind of 150 years are absolutely incredible. And as far as emergencies go, of course, there's nothing better. However, there is so much that we can do in terms of prevention and more holistically and healthfully. And that was really where my passion was. So I ended up going to a natural medicine school in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where I was born and raised, with a strong focus on Western herbs and nutrition. But I got introduced to Chinese herbal medicine because the Chinese are kind of the masters at these herbal formulations. I also, as part of that program, I also ended up doing my practicum with a Chinese doctor that my stepmom was seeing at the time. So I got a little introduction to acupuncture as well. And then when I graduated that program, I have my dual citizenship with the US. So I decided to move to the beautiful island of Maui. And not long after being there, I met a Chinese doctor who had a position available in his clinic. And of course, I applied for this position, and he liked that I knew a little bit about, acupuncture. He liked that I knew a lot about the Chinese herbs. So he offered me the gig, which really kind of changed my life for the better. So that was Dr. Malik Cotter. He's still there practicing, and he kind of took me under his wing and started training me in acupuncture, in Tai Chi, and Qigong, and just more of the kind of philosophy and principles behind Chinese medicine. Probably the most incredible thing about working with him was the results that he was getting with his patients. So unfortunately, a lot of people, and this still happens today, although it is getting better, but unfortunately, a lot of people kind of turn to more natural or alternative approaches to medicine after they've tried everything else, which again is unfortunate, but it is changing. But what I was seeing, so these patients would come to him oftentimes, at the end of their rope, they've tried everything, and within a couple months of doing acupuncture treatments, taking some herbs, they were getting, some of them quite literally getting their lives back. So I was just blown away, and obviously wanted to learn as much as I could. So I did work with him for about 2 years, and then I took the plunge and decided to go get my master's degree in acupuncture and oriental medicine. I got to stay in Hawaii. I found a school on Oahu. I did end up doing a semester in China and finished my master's degree in 2014. So after I graduated, I took a different route probably than most acupuncturists. I have a passion for traveling, so I went and practiced on cruise ships, on luxury cruise lines, pretty much cruising around the world, sharing the medicine and helping, hundreds, if not thousands of people as I went. So it was a dream job for me. And then a few years back, I got a message. I was in port hiking in Alaska, and I got a message come through on my phone from a friend of mine that I went to school with, who said that they knew someone in Thailand that needed a kind of wellness manager for their luxury hotel here. So it didn't sound like a bad gig at all. So I applied for it and ended up moving to Phuket, Thailand in 2018. I think we all know what happens after that. COVID hit, obviously 2019, 2020 here. Unfortunately, the hotel did have to close its doors. That's kind of where I kind of geared my passion, I guess, and my career onto the online platform. So I started just offering health coaching, and then specialized in helping women through menopause and kind of navigating that whole journey. Then 5 or 6 months ago, I had another friend send me this link for the REVÍVŌ Wellness Director position, and here I am, happy to be here.
That's great, Kim. We're very happy to have you, and yeah, happy to introduce you to all our followers. So I suppose we should get stuck into the topic that we are talking about today. We're talking about the microbiome. This seems to be a bit of a buzzword nowadays. Can you just explain to everyone on our call what actually is the microbiome?
Sure. And yeah, you are right. I seem to hear about it, and like every other, health article you read is something kind of relating back to the microbiome, but for a good reason. So the kind of classic definition of the microbiome is the collective genomes of all the microbes that live inside and on the human body. So these include all the bacteria, the bacteriophages, the fungi, the viruses. We're literally covered with millions and millions of these microbial cells. There's actually 10 times as many microbial cells as there are human cells on the body, on and in the body. So in that regard, we're actually a lot more bug than we are human. So these millions upon millions of organisms have lived and functioned, synergistically with our human cells, and they have a massive influence across health and the lifespan. And actually, scientists are discovering now that there's a very high potential that these microbes actually kind of influence health transgenerationally. So depending on your grandparents and great-grandparents kind of microbiome is kind of getting passed down through the generations. So that's quite fascinating. We're going to talk more about this obviously as we go on, but the microbiome, it influences so many areas of health, from obviously the immune system, but also the endocrine system, digestive functioning, metabolic functioning, emotional well-being, and so much more. So it really is kind of at the pinnacle of health and wellness.
And Kim, how is the microbiome actually created in the first place?
Okay, so for most of us, we, because when we're fetus, we live in quite a sterile environment. So for most of us, the first massive dose of microbes happens when we're traveling through the birth canal, right? Which is kind of a plethora of bacteria. And we are kind of completely covered with this bacteria, and that is sort of our first introduction. It kind of lays the foundation for this microbiome. So then, of course, we pick up more as we're breastfeeding and kind of journeying through life, through our environment. And they say the complete colonization of your microbiome is approximately around 3 years. Obviously, if all goes well, we have a really strong immune system, and this kind of homeostasis is achieved. Sometimes it doesn't go so well, and we end up with inadequate colonization and an imbalance of the, it's called gut dysbiosis, where we have an imbalance between the good and the not so good bacteria. And we start to see increased susceptibility due to different illnesses and different pathogens. Obviously, with a weakened immune system, we're a lot more open to getting sick. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, very much so. And as I was gonna ask this question, sort of when they say let your kids play in the dirt and let them get dirty and subject them to all these, bugs that, parents might be horrified to hear, but it's actually good for them, because we've become this, I suppose, world of just sanitizing, and it's become so much worse during COVID. We just sanitize everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I mean, obviously, we want to be careful of the quality of the dirt that we're letting our children play in, but the microbial load that we get from literally eating dirt is when we're kids is really quite fundamental to creating this diversity that happens, not only in the gut microbiome, but skin, it's in the oral cavities. So yeah, all for it. Let kids play in nature. The more the better.
Yeah, great. And I suppose I think a lot of our kids don't play enough in nature these days. I mean, we used to do it so much when we were little, but it's strongly suggested, as you said.
Yeah.
And then Kim, you mentioned obviously the birth is a big important way of receiving all those important microbiomes and so on. But I just wanted to ask you, what about people who get born via C-section, because they're obviously not going through that natural process?
Yeah, exactly. So unfortunately, there is quite a lot of evidence that births by cesarean section may impact the baby's immune system and also play more roles in developing things like asthma and more kind of severe food allergies. The hard truth of it is that the babies just don't get anywhere near the amount of that microbial diversity, which is really what we're looking for compared to, a natural vaginal birth. On that same thread, we could say the same for, breastfed babies versus formula babies. Now, obviously things happen, and thank goodness we can do cesarean sections, and thank goodness we can, we still have ways to feed babies if we're unable to breastfeed. But by far, natural birth and breastfeeding is the best way to really establish and ensure that that children are getting, the best shot of these microbes that will strengthen their immune system.
Right. And why is the microbiome so important for overall health?
I mean, it's kind of, I think I spoke about this a little bit already. It's just so fundamental to so many processes that happen in the body, from digestion and metabolism to hormonal balance and well-being, immunity, obviously we talked about. So, for example, there's bacteria in the gut that actually make serotonin. which is of course the happy hormone, right? Or GABA, which is like a hormone that helps to keep us calm. We also have bacteria that help control our immune system and regulate blood sugar levels and metabolism. So really, without a healthy microbiome, we're at a loss as far as vitality and just overall health goes. So I think it's fundamental for overall health.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that it even can affect your hormones, like serotonin. I don't think a lot of people actually are aware of that.
Yeah. We just did a retreat, as you know, on menopause, but a lot of the women there, because I was discussing this microbiome, and there's the estrobolome, which is part of the microbiome as well, that are kind of specific bacteria that helps you regulate estrogen levels. So I mean, we're talking about millions and millions of microbes, right? So we're still just scratching the surface and discovering what they all really do and how they work. But I mean, the more we discover, it's a fascinating subject.
Yeah. Sure. And what makes up a healthy microbiome?
Short answer is just microbial diversity, right? So we want a lot of different microorganisms. Each microbiome, kind of like your fingerprint, is unique to you. So no two microbiomes are exactly the same, but there are some commonalities to be found, and that is that the healthy microbiome is made up of a widely diverse mix of microorganisms, while the unhealthy ones tend to harbor a higher number of bacteria associated with disease. And then, as we mentioned already, that there's lots of variables, obviously, that happen throughout life, from environmental, processes and internal emotional factors, right? A lot of people that will harbor different emotions. This can also affect the microbes in your gut. So again, playing in dirt is huge when we're little. Probably the most detrimental thing for the microbiome, which unfortunately is very widespread, is the glyphosate, right? This is the major chemical found in Roundup, which is very highly toxic. It's also one of the most highly used herbicides on the planet. So study after study has shown that it's just toxic not only to the human body, and specifically the microbiome and the gut lining, but it's also very detrimental to, the ecosystem of the earth and the planet. So yeah, it's really nasty and scary stuff, but there are ways to mitigate its effects for sure.
So Kim, are you saying that Roundup and like the chemicals are on our food and, on a lot of pretty much everything we consume? How can we make like better choices? Can we buy organic vegetables? Well, I know it's difficult to completely eliminate it out of our diets, but it's as you said,
Yeah.
it's really bad.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the sad truth of it is we kind of live in a toxic world, but there are many things you can do. So, and this is sort of what we kind of integrate into our REVÍVŌ retreats, detox, and we're going to talk a little bit more. I imagine we'll get to some questions around fasting and what that will actually do to help prevent. As far as eating organic, yes, for sure. I know it's more an expensive way to go, and that's how some people look at it. However, the flip side of that is if if not eating organic food is going to affect your health in such a detrimental way, then it kind of you end up paying for it anyway. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. There is there's lists that they have. Probably the most popular people may or may not know of. If you don't know, you should, is the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So that's done by the Environmental Working Group, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but there is a establishment out there that goes and kind of measures the different pesticide levels on different fruits. So I know, for example, avocado is usually at the top of the list for the Clean 15. And you're in the grocery store and you're like, wow, there's this $3 avocado, or this organic avocado, or this $1 non-organic. It's kind of nice to know, to navigate the grocery store of like, oh, well, this one's on the Clean 15, so it's not as important to buy those organic. Other things, like I know strawberries, celery, tomatoes, I don't know all 12 of them off by heart, but there are ones that you do, if you are going to consume them, you really want to make sure that they're organic.
Cool. And I know that's an easy to find list. You can just Google clean 15 foods, as
Yep.
you mentioned. Great. And how does the microbiome actually affect our immune system? Because that's really what we want to get down to today in this conversation.
Sure. So I think it's important that we remember that the immune system is not just one system, right? It's made up of different organs and cells that all kind of work together to protect us from foreign invaders and help keep our body in homeostasis. As it turns out, their good bacteria not only help kill off bad bacteria that may make it past, our skin and mucous membranes, but they're also crucial in the development of white blood cells, which of course is some of the most fundamental cells when it comes to the body's ability to fight infection. So really, without a diversified and healthy microbiome, we're just leaving ourselves open to so many numerous health issues, whether it's from foreign invaders or elsewhere, right? So it's not the only part of the immune system, but it is, because it kind of has its hands and kind of tentacles in other areas of the immune system, that it's crucial to have it healthy and diversified.
Great. And the next big topic we want to talk about, and something that I feel you're an absolute expert in because you practice this yourself, is fasting. How does fasting actually affect the microbiome and essentially our immunity?
Yeah, this is, you're right, one of my passions. And the more research I do on it, the more, sometimes in the office, I'm like, wow. So basically, whenever we take a break from eating, our bodies are really able to rest. And probably the most crucial or kind of goal that we're aiming for when we're fasting is to flip our metabolism from glucose metabolism to ketone metabolism. Basically, metabolism is a fancy word for energy, right? So we're either getting our energy from burning sugar from the food we eat, or we're getting it from fat, which is basically the food that we have stored. So when this happens, and when we switch to the ketone metabolism, we're really, the body starts to do incredible things. I'll run you through, I think about 18 to 24 hours. Kate, you've heard me talk about autophagy so much. It's one of the coolest things. So it actually means self-eating, which doesn't sound so appealing, I know. But what they found, and forgive me, I don't remember the doctor's name, but I think it was 2015. He actually won the Nobel Prize for the discovery of autophagy. And it's our body's way of cleaning out damaged cells in order to generate newer and healthier cells. So as long as we're eating, our 3 meals plus snacks a day, which by the way is way too much food for the majority, if not all people, we're never kicking into that ketone metabolism, and therefore we're never getting that autophagy happening, right? So this is then contributing to aging, contributes to arthritis, obesity, diabetes, all the kind of chronic illnesses. If we go 24 hours as well, so a lot of people will do a dinner to dinner 24-hour fast. This is an incredible way to repair your gut. So we spoke about how the glyphosate actually kind of puts holes and cuts into the gut lining. There was a research done by MIT years ago that said when you fast from, let's say, 24 hours, you trigger your body to start making intestinal stem cells. And then those stem cells actually go and repair the mucosal lining in your gut, which is huge. So when the gut starts to repair itself, then we start to just see, this plethora of good microorganisms coming back. And when we go longer than 24 hours, the environment of the gut lining changes so that all of a sudden the environment is not, habitable to the bad bacteria, and it's an environment where the good bacteria can really thrive. If you go longer than that and you get into the 36, 48-hour fasts, one thing that starts to happen kind of around the 48-hour, which is huge, is we start to see this growth hormone production. So I believe it's 2,000% in men increase in growth hormone production and about 1,300 in women % increase. I mean, these numbers are astounding. This is the hormone that basically makes your skin look better. It makes your muscles grow. It's like, it's the youth drug. Yeah. It's, you can take it. You can, some places, I don't think it's legal everywhere. It does come along with a lot of side effects. And I think it's like $400 US dollars for like, again, don't quote me on these like dosages, but it's like for this minuscule amount, you pay $400 plus it comes on with all these side effects. So there's no drug. I mean, that's just one of the growth hormone. You know, we can talk about what happens to insulin levels as well when we fast. There's no drugs on the market that can offer us what fasting offers us, you know, and it's completely free. So, so when we look at all the effects of fasting, there's so much benefit to not only strengthening the microbiome and the immune system, but doing so, you know, just strengthening your whole body, your mind, your emotions, aesthetically, your skin, right? It's a game changer, as far as I'm concerned.
That's really amazing, because I know people always talk about the growth hormone being this magic hormone, but not many people know that you can produce it by fasting. So
right.
that's very, very interesting. So the next thing I wanted to kind of talk about, Kim, is one of the things we did when you joined the team is we really had an review of all of our signature retreats and our offerings, and decided to take this area that you're very passionate about and offer it to our guests as something they can book in the form of a retreat. So
right.
we have introduced our immune reset retreat. Yes. I was wondering if you could just talk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So I guess, you know, obviously in light of the past 18 months, I think a lot of people, there's just a lot more awareness, I think, about maybe prevention and just wellness in general. So I started thinking we could incorporate some of these, you know, fundamental principles of fasting. Now, fasting isn't something you just like dive right into. I don't recommend anybody just all of a sudden just stops eating for 24 hours. I mean, you'd probably be fine. But that is kind of what the retreat is about. We educate and explain, you know, how to kind of create a fasting lifestyle, because I think that's really what it's all about. So usually we'll, you know, my patients, I will start with get them intermittent fasting, which I know is very popular. There's a lot of people doing it. And then when you do that for a while, then you can start moving into the more longer 24 to kind of 48-hour fasts. So that was really my idea around creating the immune reset. It's geared towards strengthening the immune system, of course, but it's also developing, you know, this fasting lifestyle that will continue to serve, you know, them for the rest of their lives, really.
Yeah, so it's a really good kind of long-term investment into your health, learning how to live a fasting lifestyle.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Thanks, Kim. I think that was a really good overview. It's a lot of information, so I appreciate you summarizing for us so well. I think we could probably move on to some questions. I've had a couple come in via social media, but if any of our listeners on the call want to type a question, raise their hand, please go ahead. We obviously have Kim here to answer your questions, but I've also got a couple of questions coming in. So Kim, one of our social media followers asked about pre and probiotics within looking after the microbiome. What is your advice on this, you know, particularly after taking antibiotics, which at some point in our lives we all have to take at some point. So, you know, this is something the doctors obviously push to help us, you know, regulate our gut flora.
Yeah. So to be completely honest, I think the science behind this, the pre and probiotic, or the probiotics more specifically, it's just not super clear. Myself, I don't remember the last time I had to take antibiotics, but I remember when I did, I would absolutely take like a high strength probiotic, right? And I'm not talking like yogurt. I think yogurt is, part of the old dairy industry to like eat more yogurt. It's not the best for the probiotics, although there are some, especially if you're going to do like the thicker, like kind of Greek yogurts. If you are taking a probiotic, I highly recommend switching brands. Kind of the reason behind this is that there's so many microorganisms in our gut that when you're just feeding, even if you have 20 or 50 in your supplement, that you might not be encouraging the right growth. However, I think you got to also like pay attention to your body. I definitely feel better when I'm taking probiotics. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Zach Bush, as you know, Kate, and he has a supplement called Microbiome. And it's a liquid, and it's kind of specially formulated I'm not sure how he makes it. Doesn't really taste like anything, smells maybe a little bit like dirt. But that has been a game changer for me in my health, and I can feel it. I can feel my mind kind of like wake up after taking it. So to answer the question, yes, I think you can take probiotics in a supplement form. I'm a huge fan of trying to get most of your stuff through food. So any kind of fermented food, the kimchis, sauerkrauts, the kefir, even kombucha, right? All of this is full of pre and probiotics that will help naturally reestablish the gut microbiome. And then of course, just eating, lots of fruits and vegetables is always a good thing.
Great, thank you. Excellent advice. Do we have any questions? I have got some more. Kim, one of our followers asked, could I ask about calorie counting? A lot of people think when they stop eating, their metabolism will slow down.
Oh yeah, this is a great question. So this is super common that people think that and I don't know where it came from, but we've been told that when we stop eating, that when we do eat, your body kind of like packs on the food that you eat, right? So that going periods of time is actually more detrimental and going to cause you weight gain. I have not found any scientific research. I have no idea where this came from. Also, we've been told that the more we eat, like a lot of little doses, lots of little meals throughout the day is the way to go. It's complete nonsense. It really comes back down to that glucose metabolism versus the ketone metabolism. And as long as we're constantly putting food in our bodies in the form of like sugar, or even fruits have sugar in them too, even though they're very healthy and nutritious. If you're eating that constantly, your body is never going to get into that ketosis state. And that is when the body starts to repair itself, right? What the studies do say is actually the opposite, is that we should go longer times without fasting. And even after doing a 24-hour fast, when you do start eating, your insulin levels are going to stay lower, and you'll actually burn your food much quicker than you did before the fast. So calorie counting is not, don't do it. You're going to feel miserable. It's very hard because you're always like reining it in, and not eating so much. You're better off doing longer fasts and then eating as you would. So with the fasting, it's not that we're counting the amount of calories that we're taking in. It kind of naturally happens that we are going to eat less calories. But even with the intermittent fasting, when you're eating between a window of, let's say, 6 or 8 hours, you can still eat as much as you maybe were used to eating, whatever your timing was that you were eating before when you were doing kind of the breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So stop calorie counting, start fasting.
And just to be clear, Kim, when you say fasting, are you suggesting water fasting, juice fasting, a combination? What exactly are you consuming during this time?
Yeah, so definitely water fasting. Now, when you're doing a water fast, you can also have things like black coffee or black tea, maybe a little bit of like MCT, that medium chain triglyceride oil in your coffee. even like that bulletproof coffee with a little bit of butter and what else do they put in there? Butter and coconut oil, I think. So something like that would be fine, especially if you're kind of getting to the end of your fast and you might be struggling a little bit. But mostly just water. So again, because once we take in that juice, right? I actually like juicing fast myself. I kind of do them for different reasons, but once we're taking those nutrients in, we're going to kick our bodies out of the ketosis. So you do want to just keep it just water. Sometimes, you know, if people do struggle with a longer fast, you can add like a scoop of green, like a mixed green powder with like the barleys and wheatgrass and this kind of stuff. Just make sure that there's no sugar, obviously, in that powder that you use. And then just add a tablespoon, you know, 1 or 2 times a day would be sufficient, I'd say. Yeah.
It's really important to make sure you're not consuming any sugar in those times. Exactly. I mean, sugar's the evil culprit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Kim, we've got some questions. I'll just read them to you.
Okay.
From one of the guests on the call. I've done some fasting from 6 p.m. to 12 noon during the day. As a beginner, how do you build up to these longer fasts?
Okay, so they're fasting. Oh, so they got stopping at 6. So they got a 6-hour window. Okay, so that's usually where I'll start people. If they're completely new to fasting, I get them to just start intermittent fasting. Anywhere from you kind of start at the 12 hours and then work up. So myself, I usually do like 16 or 18-hour fasts quite regularly. If there's any menstruating women out there, I'm sure there are, you do want to make sure you are doing this with your cycle. I'm not going to get into it now, but there are certain times when you maybe don't want to do intermittent fasting and longer fasts. But for the most part, what I'll do is start people with intermittent fasting and then just slowly start closing that window until you can get maybe from, you know, dinner to dinner, and do that a couple times till you're comfortable, and then maybe push for like a longer one, like a 36-hour. When I first started doing this, there was days where I was like, I'm going to go for 36 hours. And, you know, you do have moments of like hunger, like that ghrelin will kick in, and that's like kind of the hormone that makes you hungry. It usually only lasts for about 20 minutes, and you can drink a lot of water or just kind of get on with your day and kind of stay occupied. That will really lessen and get you through those hunger pains. But there's a difference between those and being maybe slightly fatigued, and just for me, I just know, and I'm like, okay, I need to stop this fast. I'm just going to eat something. You know, we have to like also learn to like gauge our bodies. I've also done other fasts for like 48 plus hours and felt completely fine and had more energy than I have when I'm eating, you know, my regular way. So it's important to listen to your body. But for someone who wants to start getting into the longer fast, just start slow and don't beat yourself up if you don't make it. If you're like, oh, I only made it 20 hours, just try again next week or in a few days. That's usually how I recommend to do it.
Great. Yeah. Our next question, I think you kind of answered it, is if you're new to fasting, how many hours would you start with? So I think you
usually the baseline is kind of 12, and then if you can get that window kind of closer, I kind of like the 18. So I eat between like 12 and 6. Sometimes I'm like, maybe something's happening, I'm out with friends, and I'm like, I try not to keep it too strict. That's another thing that maybe we could talk about is the fasting cycles. So I can be very like type A, organized, like, oh, I'm going to make this schedule and I'm going to fast this day, this day, this. I had it like all planned out. And it turns out that the body doesn't like that either, right? It likes this. And if you think back to, you know, our ancestors, they didn't get to plan stuff like we get to plan stuff now. Like our bodies are really made for feasting and fasting. And the more you can kind of vary that, especially for you know, patients that are trying to lose weight, sometimes they'll lose a lot of weight and then they kind of hit a plateau and they're still fasting. And so what I tell them is to like, just switch up your fast. Don't fast for a week, right? Switch up, like don't get your body too used to a certain cycle, because that's when things start to plateau. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, excellent. And I on that topic, I know there's a lot of like these apps which you can use which help you track your fasts, and maybe some people benefit from having that kind of on their phone. And
Yeah.
it can be helpful, but as you say, it's good to mix things up a little bit and not be so structured all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some, I've spoken to some clients that really like using those apps. I don't really use them myself, but I mean, whatever floats your boat, whatever is going to help you achieve what you're setting out to do, then for sure you can track it. One thing I do recommend for women is to start tracking their cycle, because that can be important, whether for fertility issues or if you have any kind of like menstrual or kind of gynecological issues. That can be crucial to know the days and the length of your cycle, and then we can work our fasting plan around that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks. So another question. So lots of questions coming in. It's great.
Okay.
So Kim, nowadays there is a huge wave of a new disease in the form of panic attacks and I suppose anxiety. Which type of food and what kind of nutrition is recommended for people who suffer from anxiety and panic attacks? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously well, maybe it's not obvious, I feel like it's obvious for me that you want to, gear away from like sugars. Caffeine can really like affect, because it can affect cortisol levels, which can then affect like anxiety and panic attacks. What is really interesting, again, like back to the fasting, is I think it's about the 36-hour mark where the dopamine receptors, which are also in your gut lining and in your brain, at about 36 hours, they start to, so we're inundated with dopamine, right? We get a dopamine hit all the time. We're checking Facebook, we're on our computer, we can order stuff really quick on our phone. This is like constant hit. So what's happening for a lot of people is these dopamine receptors are getting like blocked. So we can kind of unblock these receptors by doing longer fasts that will help with, emotional well-being, help with serotonin, which is obviously the GABA, which is huge, especially for anxiety, to just help to calm that down. Foods, I think, I'm a huge fan of plant-based whole foods. Oats are very calming. Breath work is huge. The square breathing is probably one of the easiest ones for people suffering with anxiety, to just stop, and you can just breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and then hold that exhale for 4 seconds. So you're they call it box breathing. I struggled with anxiety for a number of years myself, and that was one thing that really, connecting to my breath and starting that box breathing, it was like a major game changer. Yeah.
Good. Or a retreat or a REVÍVŌ where we can help
meditation.
really
Yeah, exactly.
Find how to manage stresses in their life better. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another question. Any book recommendations for 24-hour fasting or longer? Maybe that's more about resources that people can use to guide them, I suppose. Maybe you have
a book. Yes, there is it Jason Fung? I think he's out of Canada. So I'm kind of a nerd, as you know, Kate. I do a lot of research online and like try to get like, peer-reviewed articles. There's a great, I'm pretty sure it's Jason Fung out of Vancouver, and he has a book for sure. And then there's tons of YouTube videos. What is one that I really like? It's this Indian doctor, and he's quite funny. So it's very, keeps you engaged. I don't know. Can we send it out to people in the show notes? And if I think of something in the show notes, when we send it out to people that can't make it, I can put some more resources in there.
Sure. No problem at all.
Okay.
Let's just move on to another question. Sorry, 1 second. Is there a preferred water that you should drink?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, I think like anything you put in your body, you want it to be quality. So you can get, if you're lucky enough to have a Kangen water maker or something, that's great. I know there's really great water filtration systems out there. But yeah, of course, we don't want to be, especially because we're drinking a lot more water when we're fasting, we don't want it to be, tap water or, have a bunch of fluoride in it or God knows what else they put in there. So yeah, basically good spring water, as clean of water you can get would be ideal.
Great. Next question. A lot coming in. Hi, Kim. I have a GERD problem. From this condition, it makes obviously eating difficult, as this affect me negatively. What are your suggestions if she wants to consistently intermittent fast with having GERD?
Yeah, I would suggest starting with intermittent fasting. So I'm not sure whether this person has taken, a lot of times what they'll do is prescribe like the antacids for the GERD, which is actually really detrimental to the microbiome. And sometimes when we get the GERD, Western medicine kind of looks at it more of like we have too much stomach acid in the stomach, which is sometimes the case, but very often it's because we don't have enough because of our diet and, maybe stress has like dampened our digestive fires. So, I mean, it's obviously hard to say without seeing this person, but if they haven't, like you could try like a digestive enzymes. I would absolutely be trying to do longer fasts, like trying the 24 hours, maybe doing 2 24-hour fasts a week. Again, if you are menstruating, then please send me an email and I'll tell you the days not to do the longer fasts, because that can kind of throw your hormones out of balance. And then what's the other thing? So no cold drinks for sure with meals. I think I speak about this a lot, especially, one of the first things you get when you go to a restaurant in the States or Canada or, these kind of westernized countries, you get a big glass of ice water. It's like the worst thing you can drink before you're going to eat a big meal, right? Because all the ancient cultures, they talk about this digestive fire. So we want to make sure that kind of oven is burning and that there's heat in there. So if you're going to dump a bunch of ice water on it, it can really dampen your digestion, and then we can start to get this like reflux. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say without knowing, but for sure the fasting can absolutely help calm that down. Trying digestive enzymes and kind of steering away from the cold drinks.
Fantastic. And another question, what can you actually eat when you are eating, and what do you advise? And, I can imagine everyone's thoughts are the same as mine. When I do eat, I'm going to be so hungry. I'm just going to want to gorge. But I suppose your body gets used to it. But then when you're eating, what do you recommend?
Yeah, so what do they call it? The SAD diet, the standard American diet, which I think is kind of funny, but it's kind of true. You don't necessarily want to go from eating that diet to like these 24-hour fasts, right? When you are getting into the longer fast, I mean, for the most part, we should be eating wholesome, nourishing foods, right? We're eating to nourish our bodies and keep us healthy. Having said that, I, for one, love a good pizza every now and again. We also have to live life and enjoy it, right? So as much as you can, I like the 80-20 rule. As much as you can, if you can get 80% of your diet from like plant-based whole foods, then you can kind of do what you want with the other 20%, and obviously within reason. But you'll start to know too, when you shift your diet to more kind of wholesome, when you eat that stuff that maybe you used to like really love, like, I don't know, that dessert that you used to crave, or you'll notice that you just don't like it anymore. It's because a lot of times it's not necessarily you that likes it. It's those like not so beneficial bugs and, the microbiome that is maybe offset, that is kind of making you crave those foods. So oftentimes when you get off of them, you'll lose the craving. Having said that, getting off of them can be quite challenging for some people, especially if you've been having them for a long time. But yeah, and then breaking the fast, I guess we should talk about that. Once you do get into longer fast, doing 24, 36 hours, it's important what you break your fast with. So the three main things is like a protein, a fat, or like a prebiotic. So like when I break my fast, I usually like eat avocado with some salt and like a squeeze of lime or something. You can do, kimchi or any of the fermented foods we talked about, or like a protein, even like a salmon or something. You don't want to break a long fast with like a pizza or a piece of bread even. You want to make sure it's in that category of, make sure it has like some fat component to it, or just really, live living food, like the fermented foods.
Great. And I think we probably only have time for one more question, Kim, because it's been a lot of talking from your side.
Wow.
So I hope you can take one more.
Of course, yeah.
I think this is a great one. Can anyone fast? Who should be avoiding fasting?
Okay, gold star to whoever asked this question, because yeah, that's important to talk about. So, fasting is very safe. There are some people that don't want to fast. So, typically children under the age of 16, you wouldn't necessarily put on a fast unless they had some sort of underlying kind of endocrine disorder or like childhood obesity. That would, be a very wise decision to start fasting them. So diabetes patients taking insulin. There is a ton of research that we can actually reverse type 2 diabetes with fasting, but you want to work with your doctor with that one for sure. Just because we didn't talk so much about it, but it is because we're dropping the insulin levels. If you're putting insulin in your body, then we can start to get into like this hypoglycemic state and cause some problems. Pregnant, breastfeeding women don't need to fast. It shouldn't fast. And then anyone on like the more heavy, like the blood thinner drugs, like the warfarin, Coumadin, I would probably check with your doctor for sure before jumping into a longer fast. The intermittent fasting is probably fine. And then of course, like if somebody suffered with an eating disorder before, like if somebody has a history of, anorexia or bulimia, I would definitely use caution fasting. Some people look at me and they're like, why are you fasting? You're so thin. And I'm like, well, I know I'm thin, but I'm not like emancipated, and I'm not doing it for, weight loss. I'm doing it for like all of the other health benefits that I get, so that would be a little bit of a red flag for me if I had a patient that had that history. Not to say they can't do it. I would just make sure it was a little bit more monitored. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think everyone associates fasting with weight loss. It's the first thing they think of, whereas over this past hour, you've really explained to us really well all the other benefits, and there are so many benefits. So
it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. I can't believe there are a lot of people talking about it. And then I think like, oh, why aren't more doctors talking about it? It's like, it's free. You can't, you just got to drink water, right? You're not gonna patentize fasting anytime soon. So, anyways, hey ho, that's another whole can of worms.
I think it's also probably a bit of a mental challenge for a lot of people. So it's maybe a good challenge to challenge yourself mentally, not just physically.
And start slow and don't beat yourself up if you're setting out for this 24-hour fast and after 18 you're like, I'm over it, or then just try again in a few days. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kim. I think I just wanted to end off by saying, when as some of our listeners know, we offer pre-stay consultations before our guests arrive at REVÍVŌ. We really want to learn to get to know our guests before they've even set foot on the property. And these are complimentary consultations, and these are done with Kim. So there's an area on our website if anyone would be interested in chatting to Kim more, or potentially even curating a retreat specifically for your goals and needs. Do get in touch with us, because that's essentially what you where your skills lie, and making sure that all of our guests are getting highly personalized service. So there's that there's the pre-arrival consultation which guests can book on our website. As well as we do a very thorough questionnaire where we get sent to all our guests before they arrive in terms of planning out as much as possible about people's health, not just their physical health, but emotional health as well. So that will all be going to Kim. And now that everyone's met you, they'll, I'm sure, be more enthusiastic to have a call with you and get to know you a bit better, and hopefully meet you in Bali when we open and when we can accept guests again.
Yes. I'm looking forward to it. So I think, thanks everyone. Thanks for the questions. And like Kate said, hopefully we get to see you soon. The nice thing about the retreats is that if you're trying to make a lifestyle change, it can help to kind of jumpstart it. I think that's one of the major benefits, is to just kind of come a few days to a week and blast off from there. We can really get a lot done.
One question came in, when are we opening? Good question. I did mention it earlier in the call, but Bali's still closed to international travel without quarantine. They have announced that they're open. The Bali airport is open, but guests still have to quarantine, I think, for about 8 days before they can move on and enjoy a holiday. So we're hoping by January is what we're aiming for. January, early 2022, we'll be able to open when Bali opens up to travel, tourism, and lets people on, obviously without quarantining, similar to the model that Thailand is following. Hopefully we'll see some movement, but we'll keep you updated. We're following the government announcements closely, and we are very much looking forward to welcoming guests again.